Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video, and welcome to sunny Titusville, Florida, right along the Space Coast where many rockets are launched. And in continuing with that same theme, we have another family member's rocket ship. So in this video, we're going to go through and see what my girlfriend's grandfather, who is now 86 years old, to see what he thinks about his Tesla Model 3 after owning it for 2 years. If you guys never saw the video, about 2 years ago, we had Just Out of Spec Motoring as our only YouTube channel, breaking into the YouTube automotive world. And one of the first videos we shot was Alyssa's grandfather taking delivery of this Tesla Model 3. In this video, we're going to sit down with Chuck and go for a drive and see how he's been getting on with electric cars for the last 2 years. Almost everything in Chuck's life is electric, from an electric bike to an electric golf cart. So let's see how the car is fitting in. Hey Chuck, this looks like a really neat car you have here. What's the exact spec on this car?
Well, it's an M3, 2019.
Yep.
I bought it in June 23rd of 2019. There's long range battery on it and rear wheel drive. I guess one of the last ones to be long range, and of course I didn't need all-wheel drive in Florida, so I chose to buy the long range rear-wheel drive.
Nice. Well, it looks great. Seems to be holding up really well. On the exterior, it looks like I can tell you've done some window tinting to it.
Yes, I did.
And that looks really nice. So really dark Florida tints here. Overall, seems that you're keeping it really clean.
Oh yeah, I take it to a car wash. I've got cost me $19.99 for a month, and I can wash it as often as I need.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Well, what do you say we jump in? You can take us for a drive and we'll just talk about what it's been like to own this electric car for 2 years.
Okay, let's go.
So Chuck, we're now in your, what is this, a 2018, 2019?
2019, yes.
19 Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive aero wheel, which is the most efficient, longest-range Model 3 you could get.
Yeah.
And you've already gone on a couple trips with this car. I know you and I have spoken tons about what it's been like to own this car. But I think let's start with your thoughts on, you know, how an electric car has fit into your lifestyle.
Well, for one thing, it's easy to drive, believe it or not, once you catch on to it. You don't have to be a computer tech to drive it. But what I like about it is it's so precise, and what you do, you can set everything up. You can set this up to be just an average car, or you can set it up to be autonomous. Of course, I drive it with the Autopilot on most of the time.
Right, and we'll talk a little bit more about Autopilot in a little bit, but maybe you could share with our viewers a little bit more about your career in the past.
Well, I was in the military. I flew in B-29s and B-50s in Japan in typhoons on purpose, weather reconnaissance. Then I come out of there and I went to school, and I left that with the FAA. I was with the FAA for 34 years as an air traffic controller, and on up to a manager of a facility.
Right, and you worked at some of the largest airports in the country.
I started in Chicago, worked Minneapolis Center, Los Angeles Center, assistant chief, and then Boston Center as manager.
That's amazing, really cool. And you know, coming into essentially the most, would you say this car is probably the most plane-like car you've driven?
No question about it. In fact, I actually like it, even though I was a pilot. It had all kinds of gadgets. This one here, all your gadgets are on a 14-inch screen, a computer screen, and that's it. Otherwise, the car is plain as day with a nice wooden piece across the dash. That's it.
Yeah, it's just a screen and a steering wheel.
Yeah.
And you prefer that minimalistic interior, correct?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And it's stopping at the stop sign all by itself for you.
All by itself. I haven't touched the accelerator. What's nice about that is I won't have to ever have my my brakes redone, because I never use the brakes.
And
with
that's
the acceleration that you have and the deceleration, I've learned how to do that when I'm driving it normally, and I can stop without ever using the brake.
So let's get into some more categorical talk, like for example, range of an electric car. A lot of people, regardless of their age group, have this so-called range anxiety. And you bought, obviously, a very long-range electric car, but you only charge it, I've noticed, to 50% every day to preserve the battery.
Well, that's all I need really around here in town. And most of the people that have these are charging at home, like I do. Very rare do I ever, when I go on a trip, then I'll take it up to 100%. Otherwise, it's at like 50%, which in this car is 150 miles. I get 320 miles on this long-range battery.
Yeah, and you would say in the warm weather down here in Florida with the Aero wheels, you really do get most of that mileage, right?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so pretty impressive to say the range. So you would say, you know, taking it on trips now, driving it around, you have no range anxiety?
Not at all. No, in fact, there's so many superchargers, Tesla superchargers around here, that you'd never run out of battery for sure.
So can you explain what a supercharger route plan would look like? Let's say you're going to go from here, and our audience knows Lisa, your daughter, who we just put a video up today actually of her.
Yeah.
So they're familiar with her. How would that trip look? It would almost be like a flight plan for refueling, but the car doesn't.
That's exactly what it is. In fact, it's an automated flight plan. When I was flying, I had to do all this manually. What I need to do, and all I have to do is show my daughter's address on the computer and plug it in, and it comes up with not only the route to take, but also all the routes, all the superchargers to stop and charge. Up there, it's only about 2 of them. That's it. So that's nothing. It's no different than stopping for at a place, you know, along the way. To
refuel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is that's pretty neat. You know, one of our channels is dedicated to just electric car road tripping, so our audience is pretty familiar with how easy that is, how fast the stops are, especially with Supercharger V3, which you have a new 250 kilowatt supercharger just down the road here.
16 units in there.
It's pretty amazing.
It? Yeah.
Yeah, that is crazy how much just, you know, you zoom out on the Florida map with the car and there's just dots everywhere to charge.
And so I also had a referral, so I had 1,000 miles that I had to get rid of, even though it's only 2 miles away from me.
What we'll do is we'll put your referral in the link of this video.
Yeah.
And if anyone buys a Tesla from watching you, they can give you 1,000 miles of free charging.
And they get 1,000 miles of free charging also.
That's right, they do, absolutely. So, you know, you're obviously very much into Tesla, but why did you choose the Tesla over other electric cars?
Well, primarily because I was introduced to it by you. Sure. And it just seemed to be the way to go. I've read a bit about Elon Musk and what he's like and what have you, and I really think he's really doing a lot for our country. And I'm waiting right now for cars to get by so I can go. I got one car behind me, so I'm going to speed up a little bit, not much, so I don't bother him. But what's nice about this car is you put it in autopilot, and it takes you up to the speed on the highway, and it levels you off, and that's it. But you're also waiting for other cars to go by you because you're so fast in acceleration that they can't keep up with you.
You just blast away from the lights, basically.
You want to go on the highway?
Yeah, let's go up on the highway. Yeah, so with your autopilot, you use this system quite often, it sounds like.
Always. Even in the city. But you have to be careful in the city because the markings are not that good, and a lot of times the markings will not, on the road, the car will not respond to them.
Sure.
So I usually drive with both hands on the wheel.
Yeah, ready to take over.
Ready to take over, yeah.
And you purchased full self-driving for this vehicle, the so-called option. It's not truly full
correct.
self-driving. It's a silly name. Because it doesn't, you can't just send it off to go somewhere.
No.
And I personally don't think you ever will be able to.
Yeah.
But coming from Autopilot in planes, you understand that Autopilot is a driver assistance, just like a pilot assistance system.
That's right.
Not a driverless system.
Yeah.
And so you actually use the system correctly, where you're basically allowing the car to handle the mundane task of lane centering,
Yeah.
while you can monitor the controls and situation.
And by the way, if you don't leave your hand on the wheel, it'll give you an indicator. It'll tell you to put your hand on the wheel. And if you're not listening or not watching, then your speedometer will start flashing blue. And if you forget about that, it'll shut off. So there's no way that this car is going to go with somebody sleeping, and it's going to shut down, and it's going to stop and decelerate right on the highway.
And it'll scream at you too.
And yes, it'll scream. Yeah.
So, 2 years in, let's talk about some practical things, costs, maintenance. How many miles have you done on this car? It looks like you've done just about 20,000 miles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's actually quite a bit for not having to commute anywhere.
Well, especially with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys didn't really go much, so I think without it, you would have put a lot more miles on.
Oh, yeah.
But you're used to, you went from flying to then touring the country with a coach. You're like RVing.
A motor coach.
Yeah, motor coach. And then, now you have an electric car. So do you expect to be taking, trips up and down the East Coast with this car, or what's your plan for it, basically?
Well, we'll go visit our relatives. They live up in North Carolina, and even down south. We'll take trips on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of the travel will just be around here. So that's why I only leave 50% of my. I'm going to go off here a minute.
Sure. Yeah, that's why you leave 50% charge in the battery.
Yeah, that's right.
But what about maintenance? Have you had to bring it in for anything? You've mentioned that
not at all.
You've never had to go for anything.
No, not at all. In fact, I've rotated the tires now twice.
Okay.
And that's it. Well, I have to make sure that I have water in the reserve for the windshield wipers.
Oh, sure.
And that's it. That's all I've done for this car.
That's pretty incredible.
All I've had to do.
Yeah, that's impressive. I have almost 100,000 miles on my Model 3, and yeah, never brought it in for anything other than a couple little broken items, but never service.
Yeah.
And that's the best part, I think, of having an electric car, is just that they just run and run and run, and your battery's still just as healthy as it was the day when it was new, and you've been taking care of it, of course. So, when we shot your original delivery video, when you took, delivery of your car, we mentioned, a couple things about, our audience was really interested in how an older person was going to handle all of this new technology. But I think you would argue it's actually simpler than your average car.
Oh, there's no question about it. Once you learn how to drive it, in fact, if you don't do it, it says it's just going to slap you in the hand and shut down, and then you can't use the autopilot until your next trip. So you just stick with it.
You get put in autopilot jail if you don't do it correctly.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm glad you're using the system safely and paying attention, of course. I think a lot of Tesla owners abuse autopilot and end up texting and not paying attention, and that's where things can get dangerous, of course. What would you suggest, or at least, if you had to say anything to people in your generation, 80 plus years old, who are thinking about buying a Tesla or an electric car, what are some things that you would suggest for them to know?
Well, to know, first of all, it's a very simple automobile. actually. You don't realize it because you don't know anything about it. But once you learn about these cars, you'll find out that it's probably even easier to drive this car than it is an ICE.
Yep. And you know, instant acceleration we just experienced whizzes you up on the highway. Great feeling.
And it puts you on the speed limit. So I find myself handling the speed limit more so at this car at the speed limit than I ever did with my ICE. I was always speeding too, or going too fast. But I don't do it on here. I don't have to.
Right, it's easy just to maintain the regular speed limit with this car. You know, everything we've spoken about so far has been pretty positive. You know, the cost of ownership is less, of course. You know, you plug it in at home, it's, you know, ready to go every day for you. It's great to drive, great driver assistance. What, and if there are any, what are some negatives that you've experienced going with an electric car?
Really? Offhand, I can't think of any, to be honest with you.
That's amazing.
Really. It's just a perfect car. And by the way, I'll never have another ICE auto.
Right.
Never.
You're committed to electric driving.
Yeah, and if you're my age and you're thinking about buying one, buy it. You'll be happy you did, especially with the price of fuel nowadays.
Oh sure, yeah. Well, we're dealing with that with our diesel Sprinter, just filling up everywhere. What's next after the Model 3? You know, you've had this 2 years. Are you itching for a different car, an upgrade, or what are you thinking?
Well, I was thinking about getting the Y.
Right. The Y wasn't out at the time when you got your car.
No, it wasn't. And what I have is perfect. There's no question about it. But it is a sports car, and the Y is more like a SUV. It's a little higher, and I guess probably easier for my age to get in and out of. But you pay a little bit more for it, and that is an all-wheel drive. You can't buy it like I did.
Right, you can't get a big battery rear-wheel drive Y. So
no.
Not only are you going up in size, you're going up with drivetrain motors, which is still kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, from my perception, you learned this car well. You are waiting for every software update to install. You've really been into it as an enthusiast, not just an owner. And I think that's been the most exciting thing, is to see, you know, I know a lot of Tesla owners that are, you know, from 17-year-olds that the parents bought their cars and they're really into it, all the way up to you. I think is the oldest Tesla owner that I know personally. And you seem to have the same passion for not only electric driving, but also the brand and the cars. And that's pretty exciting.
The other thing for the older people like myself, it's such a safe car to drive. I mean, it's the safest car on the road by the government standards. And that's something when you get my age. You know that it's going to help you drive and steer the car as long as you stay on top of it.
Well, I think that's awesome. I think it's great to hear that you're excited about your car, that it's been working out well for you, that you've had almost no problems. And what I think we'll do is, if you decide to upgrade to a Model Y, the one nice thing is your car's held its value unbelievably well.
Yeah. It has.
So if you do ever decide to get a Model Y, we'll film another delivery video.
Okay.
Sounds great. Well, thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for watching, for tuning into another Out of Spec Reviews video. If you haven't yet, go watch Chuck's delivery video on the day that we took this car from, was it Orlando that we got it in?
Yes.
Yeah. And you can watch, you know, what it was like when this car was brand new. Got to say, it looks still brand new, feels brand new, not a squeak or rattle.
There's one more thing I wanted to tell the folks, is that I'm telling on myself, but I locked myself out of this car one time. And all I had to do was call up the service center, which now we have one in Merritt Island, as well as Orlando. And after they asked me a few questions to realize that it was my car, they went ahead and opened the car door for me. Can you imagine that? 30, 40 miles away, and he opened it up while I sit there and watched.
Yeah, and that was because you left your wallet with your key card and your phone in the front trunk.
Oh, you had to tell them that.
I know.
You?
Well, that was they were going to ask anyway. And also, there is a manual way to open the front trunk just by putting 12 volt to the 2 cables out there, but I don't think you had known that.
No, I didn't know.
Right, but at least it's nice to call and they'll just open it up remotely for you. How about that?
It's unreal.
Unreal. Well, great to share this video with our audience. We'll do another update in a little while, but pretty much no cost to run this car so far.
Oh no, very little cost. What is it? Maybe 13 cents
A kilowatt hour, something
hour,
like that. Yeah.
13 cents a kilowatt hour.
That's cheap.
Or 3 cents. Isn't
At
it?
night, I don't think it's 3 cents. Is it that low?
Oh, 13 cents. No,
13 sounds
for charging.
normal. Yeah.
But I was listening to YouTube where the fella was comparing the piston engine with ours, and I think he said it cost him after 2 years 3 cents a mile to drive that car.
Oh, wow.
Miles per gallon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, thanks again, and we'll see y'all on the next video. Bye-bye.